Next on Currents News, he now represents the Catholic Church to the entire world. The Pope's new UN ambassador is on the job after being welcomed to New York. 2 Catholic nuns in Iowa haven't missed a vote since Kennedy ran for president. Now they have a dilemma. We have the exclusive report.
A unique performance at One Catholic Academy in Queens. I'm Tim Harfman. I'll tell you how students are not only learning new dance moves, but they're taking a step closer to Christ. That's coming up.
He just came and went quietly and prayed.
Kobe Bryant's pastor on what happened at church right before that deadly helicopter crash. The news starts right now. Good evening, I'm Lydia Serrani. Archbishop Gabriel Cacha is now on the job, and it's a big one. He's responsible for telling the world what the Catholic Church believes about crucial issues impacting people around the globe. The Archbishop is the Pope's new UN ambassador. Currents News' Emily Druby reports on his arrival in New York.
A warm welcome for Archbishop Gabriel Cacha. Just hours after handing in his letter officially making him the papal ambassador to the United Nations, he celebrated Mass at the Church of the Holy Family in Manhattan. Using his homily to reinforce Pope Francis's support for the United Nations.
This organization is much needed in the world today, even if it could be reformed, changed, but still we need a global forum to face global problems.
Following Mass, Archbishop Cacha met with parishioners, clergy, and UN staff. The calm before the storm. As the Pope's official representation to the UN, the Archbishop has a lot of work ahead of him, teaching the world the Catholic Church's beliefs on crucial issues.
To support the family, to work for peace, to help protect every innocent life, to care for our planet, what Pope Francis calls our common home, to try to get rid of the threat of nuclear weapons so that we won't bomb ourselves into the Stone Age.
It can be a difficult job, but many say his past experience in Lebanon and the Philippines will be a big asset.
And he's very in tune there, so it'd be very good for him to have a message here on the world stage to understand better what's going on and really what might be done to help.
Archbishop Cacha is the 7th to hold the UN ambassador position since it was created in 1964. He succeeds Archbishop Bernardito Auza. In Midtown Manhattan, Emily Druby, Currents News.
Tonight, Senate Republicans think they've corralled enough votes to block witnesses at President Trump's impeachment trial. If that proves true, the chief executive could be acquitted of the charges against him as soon as Friday. Today in the chamber, there were hours of questions directed at the Trump legal team and House prosecutors. The senators were required to submit their inquiries to Chief Justice John Roberts, who read them aloud. John Bolton is high on the Democrats' impeachment wish list. We are now learning that the White House is telling the former national security advisor that his new book can't be published as is because there are too many secrets inside. Leaks of the manuscript had Trump linking aid to Ukraine with an investigation of political rivals. Earlier this month, following an Iranian missile strike, President Trump assured the public that no Americans were harmed in the attack. A week later, we learned that 11 U.S. troops were being treated for brain injuries. That number then climbed to 34, and now it's 50. Meantime, the president held a Keep America Great rally in New Jersey. President Trump at his rally Tuesday night in Wildwood, New Jersey, applauding U.S. troops for the drone strike that killed a top Iranian general earlier this month.
Weeks ago, at my direction, the U.S. military launched a flawless precision strike that killed the world's #1 terrorist, Qasem Soleimani.
And now the Pentagon reports 50 military personnel are suffering from traumatic brain injuries following Iran's retaliatory missile attack on U.S. forces. According to a Pentagon statement, 32 of those service members are now back on duty after treatment. 18 were taken to Germany for additional evaluation and treatment. President Trump and the Pentagon originally said that no U.S. troops were killed or injured in the January 8th attack from Iran. But last week in Switzerland, the president backtracked on the issue.
I heard that they had headaches and a couple of other things, but I would say, and I can report, it is not very serious.
Traumatic brain injuries aren't always immediately apparent, but the Pentagon's announcement shows the attack was more serious than initial reports. The Defense and Veterans Brain Injury Center says most traumatic brain injuries suffered in the military are mild. The Veterans of Foreign Wars wants the president to apologize for originally downplaying the extent of the missile injuries. A big political win for the president today at the White House when he put pen to paper. A trade deal with Mexico and Canada is now law. Trump is keeping a key campaign promise to dump NAFTA. The new agreement encourages auto manufacturing in North America and better protects workers. The president said the deal will keep jobs in America and spur new growth. There's only 5 days to go till Iowa kicks off the presidential nominating calendar, and a new poll is showing that it's going to be a nail-biter. Right now, it's anyone's fight. Vice President Joe Biden and Senator Bernie Sanders are battling for the lead, with Mayor Peter Buttigieg and Senator Elizabeth Warren close behind. The Monmouth University survey released today also indicates this. Nearly half of the caucus's goers say they are open to switching support to another candidate come caucus night. But time is running out for those undecided Iowa Democrats. Currents News' Michelle Powers was in the Hawkeye State and met a pair of sisters who have never missed a caucus. And they've always known exactly who they wanted to vote for. But this year, they're considering all 5 of the frontrunners.
Come on, let's do it.
Most Iowans don't get involved in the political race.
Go, Jeannie, go.
But these two sisters in their 80s have never stopped.
That's the gospel call, to be involved with what happens to your brother and sister.
Jeannie and Elaine Hagedorn are sisters.
She's my little sister.
Siblings and part of the Congregation of the Humility of Mary.
This is Elaine, our sister Mary Jo, and me.
Growing up in the Hawkeye State, they were determined to make it a better place, so they never missed a caucus.
You can't really do that to a certain extent without being involved in politics.
Heat prostration.
The pair came of age during the Vietnam War, when political activism first took college campuses by storm.
Nuns stage a 10-block march.
The sisters had just taken their final vows and were coming back into the secular world.
There was a lot to catch up on.
But since that moment, they've made it their mission to cast every ballot they could. Their first one for the first Catholic president.
One of my students was saying, well, sister, who are you going to vote for? Who are you going to vote for? And the other little guy says, oh, that's a crazy question. Don't you know that Nixon is a Republican and Kennedy is a Catholic?
Since the 60s, Sister Jeannie and Elaine have volunteered in every presidential election to get out the vote, supporting the candidate they believe best upholds Catholic values.
They certainly are very partisan.
Whether that meant making thousands of phone calls,
Are you planning to caucus?
canvassing, or touring the state with nuns on the bus. Unlike others, the pair says they never argue over politics.
We probably do it more over sports. Yes. I'm a Cyclone. And I'm a Hawkeye.
This year, their biggest concern is Iowa's growing Hispanic population, a community they minister to. They want to make sure Hispanics are represented in Iowa and in the Oval Office.
We've gotten to know and care about so many immigrants, and that's a big issue for us as well.
Right now, they aren't sure which candidate will do that best. And for the first time in their lives, they might just vote for different people.
I've gone to caucuses. If we don't get involved, then we have no one else to blame.
So they're calling all Catholics. They'll see you at the polls. Michelle Powers, Currents News.
We are probably not going to know for at least a year why Kobe Bryant's helicopter crashed. Wreckage is being airlifted from the rugged California mountainside where the chopper went down, and we're learning that the aircraft lacked a key warning system which could have alerted the pilot to the fast approaching terrain. The NTSB is saying it'll be 12 to 18 months before their investigation of the tragedy is completed. And just hours before that deadly accident, Kobe went to pray at Our Lady Queen of Angels Church in Newport Beach. Father Steve SALLOT is the pastor there, and he saw Kobe right before the start of that 7 a.m. Mass on Sunday.
We shook hands, and I saw that he had blessed himself because there was a little holy water on his forehead. So I knew that he got into the chapel to pray and came out and blessed himself. And then we spoke for a minute, shook hands, and off he went. Normally, I don't really chat with him because he just, as I say, he would come in and leave quietly. And I respected that space for him. And yesterday, it just so happened I was coming in the same door as he was going out. And I would call that the backhand of grace, that we had a moment. For me, it was a grace, and hopefully for him it was as well.
Kobe's parish is now praying for his soul, that of his daughter, and the 7 others who died in the crash. Now for the latest on the deadly virus that's ravaging China. Infections are multiplying fast. In Wuhan, a city of 11 million people, the streets are now empty, as you see right there. It's where the disease originated. So far, more than 6,000 cases have been confirmed. The biggest worry tonight, though, the mysterious virus is increasingly spreading between people outside of China. The first plane load of evacuated Americans is back in California after a refueling stop in Alaska. Precautions were taken.
So the way that this plane was put together, the upper level of the crew was completely separated from the lower passengers. So airflow, every sort of interaction between the top and the bottom were completely isolated.
British Airways is suspending all direct flights between the UK and mainland China. The Trump administration is now considering a similar ban. There's a lot more news headed your way. Talented Catholic school kids in Queens dancing up a storm to celebrate a special time. Pope Francis has a new book out. We'll tell you who he's writing about.
I don't think most women find it something to joke about or laugh about.
And she's a fighter for life and says abortion is no joke after a performer used a deadly procedure as a punchline. Stepping into Catholic Schools Week, these students are showing their love for their school with a one-of-a-kind performance. It's no secret that a Catholic education is the best. It fulfills a child's spiritual as well as educational needs. To celebrate Catholic Schools Week, students at Incarnation Catholic Academy in Queens Village are showing their school some love, one step at a time. Currents News' Tim Harfman reports.
Stomping and clapping at Incarnation Catholic Academy in Queens Village. They're students known as the Steppers. School officials say Incarnation is the only Catholic academy in the Brooklyn Diocese with a step team. The group ranges from 7th graders to kindergartner Sydney Campbell.
It looked fun, and I really wanted to try the dance moves.
It's not all about fun. 7th grader Andrew Wright learns dance moves and values for the future.
We are disciplined in the step group, and it would help me in life to control myself.
Which includes getting good grades. Instructor Susan Richards has seen significant change in students since they joined the Steppers.
They focus more, they study more, and they're very interested in this art form.
The art form just part of the Academy's Catholic Schools Week celebration.
Lord, I come to you.
Students also sang songs and read prayers this morning for a special guest, Brooklyn Auxiliary Bishop Paul Sanchez.
All of those talents are God-given. So if they also bring their faith in God to whatever profession they work in, they become instruments of God's grace, witnesses to His power and will in today's world.
Stepping in the right direction of faith and life. In Queens Village, Tim Harfman, Currents News.
Pope Francis has co-authored a book on St. John Paul II. The pontiff had a special relationship with the saint. Not only did John Paul make Jorge Mario Bergoglio a cardinal, but years later it was Francis who promoted the canonization of his predecessor. The new book is titled St. John Paul the Great and will be published on February 14th. The Holy Father is also convening a summit at the Vatican to tackle the challenges that face the elderly. Global experts gathered at the Vatican today for the first international conference dedicated to the pastoral care of older people. There's about 500 experts from 60 countries. The Pope will address them on Friday.
Mike Pence is also very anti-choice. He thinks abortion is murder, which, first of all, don't knock it till you try it. And when you do try it, really knock it. You know, you got to get that baby out of there.
And that was comedian Michelle Wolf performing at the White House Correspondents' Dinner back in 2018, joking about abortion. But ending an unborn baby's life is no joke, and Wolf is not the only performer using abortion as a punchline. Here with me now to talk more about this is the editor-in-chief of Human Life Review, Maria McFadden-Mafucci. Welcome, Maria.
I'm really glad to be here to talk about this.
Right, so first off, what was your reaction to hearing that video?
It's disgusting. It's awful. There were surely women in that audience who have had abortions, and I don't think most women find it something to joke about or laugh about.
And she's a mother herself, isn't she?
I believe so. I believe she has a daughter.
And she even called it a baby. You heard that in the video.
She said, yes, she called it a baby.
Okay, so, well, not surprisingly, though, a lot of people in that audience are left-leaning, but we didn't hear much laughs. We heard some groaning, and yet a recent study also found that 7 out of 10 pro-abortion Democrats actually believe that the procedure should be limited to the first trimester, yet most of the Democrats running for president believe abortion should be legal up until birth. Do you think these presidential candidates, these Democrats, will actually lose voters because of this issue?
I think they ought to, because the majority of Americans, as you said, are uncomfortable with most abortions, especially the late term. And the position of the Democrats, all the candidates right now, is so radical, doesn't take into any consideration rights of the unborn child. So I think they should lose. I think it's wildly out of touch with what Americans believe.
Right, because a lot of people think that these actresses that come out and say, oh, I had an abortion and it was the greatest thing I ever did, that's not actually representative of most Americans.
Not at all. And as a feminist pro-lifer myself, I think the message is that why should women have to basically kill their child to get ahead or give up their child to get ahead? So that's not a good message to be telling women at all.
Yesterday, a pro-life group said that their commercial featuring abortion survivors, the word abortion wasn't even mentioned in this commercial, they just featured abortion survivors, was banned from airing during the Super Bowl. Do you think the same would happen for a pro-abortion group? I mean, we mentioned that in her Netflix special, Michelle Wolf, she actually said that she was proud of having an abortion, that it made her feel like God, it was powerful, and that was okay to say that. Yet
Yes.
This commercial featuring abortion survivors has been blocked. What do you think about that?
I think it's awful. So one of the things, especially in New York with the Reproductive Health Act, is that if a baby is born alive after an abortion attempt, there is now no consideration that they need to be helped medically. And one of the women, I think the main woman on that commercial, actually survived a saline abortion. And so that commercial is saying, we exist, we have survived abortions. Are you saying that my life wasn't worth it? And I think possibly a pro-abortion commercial might be able to get on, just judging from what's been happening in Hollywood lately. Sadly, I don't think it's fair at all.
Hopefully things will change. Well, thank you so much, Maria McFadden-Mafucci, Editor-in-Chief of the Human Life Review. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
There's good news tonight on the fight to protect young people. So much progress has been made by the Archdiocese of St. Paul in Minneapolis that the government is ending oversight of the church. Archbishop Bernard HEBDA says being vigilant and rooting out clerical sexual abuse is more important now than ever.
This is certainly not a time to relax. Quite the opposite. Hard, persistent work to maintain vigilance across the 12 counties of the Archdiocese must continue.
Some of the improvements made by the Archdiocese include staff background checks and periodic performance reviews of priests. Still to come on Currents News, a church has a public message ahead of Sunday's Super Bowl. And we'll introduce you to a Christian artist and her inspiring story of courage. But before we go to break, a programming note about our special series on human trafficking. Tomorrow, we'll look at the evils of online child exploitation.
They were coaching folks on how to make their ads more acceptable and avoid detection.
Predators hunting for vulnerable young victims on the web. Part 3 of our special series, Human Trafficking Exposed, is tomorrow on Currents News. A Christian artist isn't letting anything stop her from following her dream despite some physical struggles. It's an inspiring story of courage. Madison Heaver reports from Missouri.
Art has the ability to speak when I can't put words down, when words fail me.
Minda Cox is a 31-year-old artist in Bolivar, Missouri.
I have loved art. I love painting and I love drawing. I always have.
But her method is a little unorthodox.
I was born without arms or legs.
Minda was born in India but was put up for adoption soon after.
My mother adopted me. My mother is an Episcopal priest. She's a single mom of 5 adopted girls. In my mother's house, we all had various disabilities, my sisters. We just never were allowed to use our disabilities as an excuse as to interact and do things for ourselves. We were encouraged to be very independent. People are always curious about how I eat, how I draw, how I brush my hair, how I put on my own makeup, or how I dress myself. But when they're looking at my art, they're looking at my art. They're not just looking at, oh, this disabled person with no arms or no legs. And I learned to really control watercolor, and I really fell in love with it. I put the paintbrush between my arm and my chin. The color and the paint, just watching it flow and watching it blend can be a really beautiful thing.
Now, Minda is painting cards for Valentine's Day. She says because there are so many bad things in the world, she wants to remind people that's not all there is.
People need to be reminded that there is love in the world. That's how I would like people to do, is approach people with disabilities and know that, hey, we are just people. We want to be accepted like every other person. We want to be seen for our abilities as well as our disabilities.
And that was Madison Heaver reporting on the courageous Minda. The talented artist also says that her body might be unusual, but her heart is not, adding, quote, God offers me the same grace he offers you. And finally tonight, faithful fans of football will be saying a lot of prayers ahead of Sunday's Super Bowl, especially in Kansas City. The Chiefs haven't played in the big game for 50 years, so a Methodist church decided to leave the team's fate up to God, using the Our Father as a guide in their church sign.
We kind of thought about the Lord's Prayer, and we kind of thought about what do we pray for in the Lord's Prayer, and we pray for God's will be done.
This isn't the first time the church has prayed for the Chiefs. They held services for a quick recovery after quarterback Patrick Mahomes' ankle injury late last year. And that's Currents News. I'm Lydia Serrani. Thank you so much for joining us, because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time. Good night.